So just a few words on abandon. I think all of us responded to the call to abandon ourselves to this year's theme because of the way in which the term combines notions of willfulness and unwilled, which I think interestingly carries on the work of last year's conference on willing in Toronto, but also combines notions of pleasure and rigor, concentration and forgetfulness, dedication to something that is ongoing, and an interest in knowing when to give up and choose a new path, a new object, or a new mode of action. In a moment in which we are told that so many things cannot be different than the way that they are, we invite the radical new contingencies that might emerge or open up when we loosen our hold through acts of strategic passivity, or else that might be summoned when we tighten our grip, either by clutching at the bed sheets or at a new idea that could emerge when we permit old ideas to pass, or else old ideas to blossom again in newly transformed or engorged or unrecognizable shapes. So abandon, we hope, might figure as a technique of play, but also as a way of sneaking up on seriousness. And we hope to discover new ways out of and into the things that concern us most urgently. So to get us started on this project, we thought it might be best to begin at the end on a note of radical prolepsis, and to inaugurate via the funerary, and to give birth to the conference by giving it death. We'll begin then with the speakers for our first panel on dying. We're very pleased to welcome Amy Villarejo, who's chairing the panel, who actually gave the first keynote at the conference that really was the first iteration of this, even before it was called the World Picture Conference. So we're thrilled to have Amy here. Carl Schoonover, Elena Gorfinkel, and Jennifer Jo Hung. So welcome dying to the conference. Anyway.
Droplets of sodium hydroxide congeal and self-organize in an oil compound, and when in motion, produce crystalline skins that give rise to highly complex microforms. These lifelike but non-living proto-entities can be structurally and behaviorally modified by changing the chemical properties of the surrounding medium, which in turn catalyzes internal metabolic functions within the droplets without the regulatory system of DNA. There we are. Photosynthesizing cyanobacteria spread into thin filmic layers, slowly seeking out minerals within their watery environment, very gradually over time accumulating into one of the earliest living morphologies on Earth. Adult cells are cultured and suspended. Parasitic retroviruses carrying genetic transcription factors are introduced, catapulting the cells back in time, reversing their functionality towards an ever-potential nascent state, which, although never a stable biological possibility, affords the newly modified cells the capacity to regenerate into any cell type in the body. In light of these ambiguously biological and abiological forms and processes that generate, maintain, and renew life with non-living matter and systems, I want to think about what happens when we abandon the exceptional distinctions of life and approach a threshold with non-life.
Okay, so a central polemic of object-oriented ontology is that things have agency. And a primary example for the polemic of new materialists is the odd vitality of modern refuse. How, for example, a plastic bottle lives beyond its purpose, or how pollution morphs into something other than itself. In contamination, objects and surroundings converge. For the new materialists, things can exert a will of their own in their disuse, and in the space, those discarded things consume. This seems particularly apparent in late modernity when things achieve a vitalism as their usefulness expires. From an anthropocentric perspective, garbage names stuff that has lost its use value, but released from human value, garbage acquires a will all its own in its accumulation, in its seepage, and in its corrosion.
Okay, this paper, if you'll indulge me, engages the genealogy of a pervasive but also in some ways elusive notion in the description of durational elements of the cinema, and specifically of art cinema traditions, that of dead time, alternately associated with the temps morts. While the usage of the term in film criticism and theory has become ubiquitous as shorthand for a scene or passage of film in which nothing happens, the inflections and implications of dead time span out in multiple contradictory directions. They point to the very paradoxical formulation that rests at the heart of the term as a concept, a potential concept. Cinematic time's abandoned liveliness, its lifelessness, and moments of empty, uncultivated, undesignated duration, and of uneventful inaction.